410. Project Procurement Management. The question is, regarding the procedure for the procurement in an information system, which of the following matches stage 2 in the flowchart below? We'll begin with looking at the entire flowchart as a whole and then concentrate on stage 2 to answer the question. So firstly, in step 1 we have the objective of systemization and the content of the business is informed, and the information of potential suppliers is also collected. The second stage, the system of procurement and the conditions for procurement are informed. So we have the system and the conditions for procurement. The suppliers are then asked to submit a proposal. In the next bit, we have the third stage. Based on proposals and abilities, which supplier is the best is decided. So we have a look at which supplier to use. And in the last stage, roles and responsibilities between the company and the supplier are confirmed. So we're talking about roles and responsibilities. Now the question is to say which of the following matches stage 2 in the flowchart below, and the options for the answers are as follows. A. The presentation of an RFI. B. The publication of an RFP. C. The selection of the supplier. And D. The conclusion of a contract. So we will try and find out which one of these options best describes stage 2 in that flowchart. In order to answer the question, we should begin with a very simple question. What is procurement? Procurement with regard to the introduction and development of an information system involves obtaining the necessary resources for system building. So it's all about obtaining the necessary resources for system building. The procurement of an information system, in keeping with the requirements definition, whether one is to purchase finished products or services, in-house development or external development, etc., the suitable procurement method should be decided from the very start. So the procurement method should be decided from the very start. And after the procurement method has been decided, the details concerning the procurement should be laid down. For example, the supplier, the required items concerning the procurement, the conditions for the procurement, etc. An acronym which is relevant to procurement is RFP, Request for Proposal. Now this is a document detailing the fundamental policies and the procurement details for a particular system, and it's in order to remove any unpredictability within the transaction agreement. We're always seeking to reduce unpredictability and reduce risk. The RFP is published to the suppliers, and in return, proposals are submitted based on the RFP. And so we have submission of proposals. And this is all sounding very familiar. What's going on here is that the RFP is laying down the system and the conditions for procurement, and proposals are being submitted. This is precisely what we saw happening in stage 2 of the flow diagram at the question. So we have now that we think RFP is the correct answer for that question for stage 2. Note that at the same time, the RFQ, the request for quotation, so we now have another request. We had the request for proposal, now we have the request for quotation. The RFQ is also published, and this document is also used for the purposes of submitting a proposal for any quotes. So now if we go back to the original question, the question asked, which of the following stages matches stage 2 in the flowchart below? The stage 2 was about laying down the system of procurement and the conditions of procurement, and suppliers submitting a proposal. Then we just found in the last slide that we need an RFP, a request for proposal. This means that the answer is option B, the publication of an RFP. Now, before we finish, we'd like to explain what each of the rest of the answers are, so we'll also go through all the other options. So firstly, we had option A, which involved an RFI. An RFI is another acronym standing for Request for Information. Just to remind you, we had two other requests. We had the RFP, which was the Request for Proposals. We had the RFQ, which was the Request for Quotation. And now we have the third request, the RFI, which is the Request for Information. Now, the RFI is a document companies rely on to collect information about the potential suppliers. It contains details of the potential suppliers, and information regarding the objective of systemization and the business content, etc., along with any previous developmental experiences of similar systems plus the newest information technology, etc. The potential suppliers receiving the RFI would then provide information within certain limits. This is also made useful for the purposes of reviewing the procurement details with the original supplier. This RFI, in fact, corresponds to stage 1 in the flowchart. Now, we also had option C. The selection of the supplier involves evaluating, selecting, and an approval of top management of a particular supplier. So we have the approval and the top management of a particular supplier. The selection of a supplier is based on criteria and assessments, from the proposal to the quote, certainty of development, reliability, the breakdown of the cost, the schedules for the different processes, the final deadline, and many more aspects. This section on selection of the supplier corresponds to 3 in the diagram. And lastly, we have the last option, which is D. The conclusion of a contract involves the official contraction between the company and the supplier under mutual consent. During this stage, the contract, which means the order form or the order sheet, will be drafted accordingly. This conclusion of a contract corresponds to 4. So now we have the full stage. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and they were in fact explained by options A, B, C, and D.